Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can I welcome you all to this session from the Lynster Farmers Group. I'm John Geldard. I'm chairman of the Lynster Farmers Group, and it's my first trip to Groundswell. I'm very pleased to be here and looking at the setup today. We've got a very interesting panel for you today, far more interesting than I am. On my far left, we've got Paul Barnes, a farmer from Keswick, a soil specialist and biodiversity and nature specialist. Next to Paul, we've got, on my near left, we've got Darren Gröcke, Professor Darren Gröcke from Durham University, who has been incredibly supportive to the Lynster Farmers Group in all its projects and the work that it does, and we're incredibly indebted to Darren. And on my right, we've got Hugh Ward. Hugh has spent his life around the world in the services, a royal engineer, and we are incredibly indebted to have Hugh as our team leader working with us, looking at the challenges and opportunities available in the world in the Lynster Farmers Group. I am fortunate to have had 50 years in agriculture. It's 50 years since my wife and we started on a National Trust tenant farm up in the Lake District, one of Beatrix Potter's former farms, and we're greatly indebted to Beatrix Potter for buying all those Lake District farms to look after the heritage and the biodiversity in the way that she did, and having those hefty flocks of Herdwick sheep to those upland areas to maintain the culture in those valleys and dales in the way that she did. And I remember my starting up and her giving me that opportunity, of which I was enormously grateful for. Through that 50 years, I've seen many, many challenges, changes and opportunities in the industry. I've seen governments come and go, change, policies come and go and change. But the family farm is at the bedrock of most things. Here today, you're hosted on a family farming operation, and I believe that the family farm is the bedrock of British agriculture. I'm very fortunate to be supported by my wife, 2 sons and a daughter, and grandchildren now in the farming business that we have at home, which has given me the time and scope to get out and possibly try and do what we can to preserve things and enhance things for the benefit of the community and the next generations. The Lynster Farmers Group was set up some 3 years ago through desperation of farmers' concerns about the backward steps of many schemes, our rivers not flowing properly, our waterways not properly flowing, our land being flooded where it shouldn't be, through neglect and people not caring and not bothering. We've set off about to challenge those challenges and opportunities, and we're in the process of which you'll hear later about clearing a river which has been neglected for 25 years and allowed to deteriorate, and try and bring it back to its natural state. And hopefully that will be an example for many other things that can be done and can be achieved. We hear the government talking about security. I was talking about security and food security 20 years ago, being laughed out in many rooms as unimportant. Suddenly, we have seen recently the government starting to recognise and talk about security. But what is security? Security is not security without you've got food security. Food security is not security without you've got a diverse agriculture opportunity, looking at everything from regenerative opportunities right across the board. So that's a little bit as to why the Lynster Farmers Group was set up, to try and meet some of the challenges that farmers were facing. And we came together with, our group is 48 farmers and a golf club, and we have had a lot of engagement with government and people, and hopefully on the cusp of making a difference. Without saying any further ado, I would like to hand over to Hugh Ward.
Thank you, John. Hugh Ward. So the image you can see before you is wonderful image of the River Winster taken at 5:30 one morning. That river is the river John's talking about, which has been neglected. A main river has been neglected for 25 years, and it's not a technically difficult problem. It's actually relatively straightforward. But actually, it's all the organisations that prevent it being done, which are the main challenge. What I'd now like to do is take you through the Lynster Farmers Group. I'm deliberately going to walk this way. Excellent. I'm the comedy part of the act, actually. There you go. Kendal, 14,000 hectares of upland to lowland, some of it reclaimed land, Silurian geology, calcareous geology, 13 triple SIs. You've got the River Winster, the River Gilpin, the River Pool. The Pool flows into the Gilpin. The rivers Gilpin and Pool flow into the River Kent. You've got 31 kilometres of drainage system put in the 1800s, late 1800s, and they all drain into the River Kent and into Morecambe Bay. You can see here, marked in red and orange, the outflows of this area, and you can see the judgment effectively of non-operational, partially operational, and certainly not fit for the 21st century. What this image tells you is that there's a group of farmers, 48 farmers and a golf course, and to some extent their lives have been blighted by a failure of the organisations to deal with some of the challenges. With the onset of climate change, we're expecting an increase in precipitation of about 20% and sea level rise of about a metre. On these tidal gates here, they will cease to operate. Now, when that comes to pass, that means that this land up here will begin to flood up. You will notice the lime green indicates our farms, and you can see the opportunity is quite significant, not just for a farm by farm initiative, but for something that goes way beyond that, a whole catchment initiative where you can see these broad brushes of green. This is where Paul will describe later how we can actually, through a farmers group, enable a coherent approach to nature recovery, the production of food, and also societal change. So the Lynster Farmers Group is about food, environment, and society, and at the centre of that is the farmer. Empower the farmer. If you empower the farmer, you can have all three. You cannot have all three without the farmer. We break our project into 4 main themes: improve food, environment, and society, remove CO2, principally with our soil. Manage water as an asset, energy and reduce emissions, and enable vital communities. We do that through a series of 4 fundamentals. We add value together, we understand and improve, we're agile and we're resilient, and this is about prosperity. Because if it's not about prosperity, it won't stand on its own 2 legs. Find the device that then moves the slides. Dan, can you move the slide on one? Okay, looking at the projects then. Manage water as an asset, River Winster Rehab and Outflow Maintenance Project. Technically a relatively straightforward river to sort out, approximately 30 days of work. That has taken us 2 years to get to this particular point, and the marine licence, which we received last week, has cost us £120,000. That is beyond the scope of any farmer to gain that licence. That has to change. We also have to look at outflow maintenance because we have to keep the river open. So all the work we're doing now is to make sure that River Winster stays open and continues to run a natural course. We also need to look at the light and wither slack management systems, the water management systems. And we do that because we need to make sure the water on the land is effectively managed. And then John has decided we can take on the responsibility of 40 kilometres of coastline from the River Ear to the River Keer, and that will become an outflow maintenance service, which will be based on what we learn from the River Winster. We're also looking at small on-farm anaerobic digesters and small on-farm hydroelectric systems, and we look to mini estuarine tidal power systems as soon as we possibly can. Next slide, Dan. Okay, what you see here then is the River Winster in 2016, the River Winster as it is now, and the River Winster as it will be in October this year. Next slide, please, Dan. Here is an anaerobic digester at Cockermouth. This is James and Vanessa and Cameron Steele, 74 kilowatt system, 13 days to set up once the pad had been produced, reduced an electricity bill from £8,000 a month to £200 a month. It produces a digestate which is being stabilised into a liquid and solid parts. Cameron's going to introduce a nitrogen stripper. The intent is to increase the carbon sequestration in the soil to 9 tonne carbon dioxide equivalent per hectare per year, with a significant reduction in the emissions of carbon dioxide from the slurry. Vanessa has established an ecological focus area, and there's an increase in the length of hedges, and we utilise the intersection in the hedges to create high-density habitats, which Darren will speak to you in a second. Next slide. Okay. Food, environment and society with the farmer at the centre. Farmer producing food, working with a relationship with a real scientist who explores and understands, working together with a framework of action to improve and assure, and business people and government acting in harmony. That will enable us to deliver food security and therefore national security. Next slide. Food, we'd like to use the regenerative farming concept, the 5 principles. We'd like to add one more, optimise production. For the environment, we'd like to look at air, water, habitats below the ground, habitats above the ground. We'd like to look at society, heritage, education, access, employment, community, resilience and empowerment. And we'd like to do this in a way which resets the relationship between the farmer and government. We don't need thousands of pages and lots of standards. What we need is a better working relationship between government and the farmers, which empowers the farmer. I'd now like to hand over to Paul.
Okay, I'm going to read from something in a bit, because if I try to remember it, I wouldn't. So apologies for reading from it. If you look at this slide here, I'm sure a lot of you'll get quoted all the time. Roosevelt said, "A country that destroys its soil destroys itself." He didn't know loads about farming, but he understood a bit about soil-water balance, and he understood a lot about people. He was also afflicted with polio, meant he struggled, and when you struggle, you get a bit of character. And when you've got some character, you got a bit of a direction. I'm just going to read what it says in the Green Book appraisal. It said, "Natural capital is stocks of elements of nature that have value to society, both living and non-living aspects of ecosystems." I also had a look at a bit about regeneration, because that's what this is about. Regeneration, the process of replacing, restoring, repairing, so the whole biosphere and noosphere can function. I asked Darren what the noosphere was, and he said he didn't have a clue. That shows the level of academic support we've got. So after that, we're sort of on our own a bit, really. The noosphere is that area of consciousness or thinking that we all tap into and hopefully add and elevate to. Okay, Darren? Right. So, okay, it's interesting, natural capital. The way I see it is like a web. Okay, beautiful thing, a web. Loads of lines, loads of nodes. Something going on in the middle who knows what it's all about. Doesn't actually have to try and work it out. We're looking at it to see all those fibre strands and nodes to try and work out what it is. Natural capital is far bigger than any of the explanations I've seen written. It's certainly far bigger than a lot of folk could tell us about. We applied for a landscape elm about 3 years ago. We were told it was excellent. We based our progress on getting money, so we weren't going to rely on the public purse. That's what we were told to do, and that's what we did. We were told it was excellent by everybody in Whitehall, who said it was marvellous. We didn't get half marks, but that's no surprise. I remember when I tried to be my daughter's school governor, there was 200 parents there, and I told them what I was doing. They said, "We'll support you." It came to the vote. I got 9 votes out of 200. I demanded a recount, there was 6. So I do know you shouldn't complain when you don't quite get what you want. The other thing about natural capital is, if you remember the 25-year plan that Dieter Helm and Michael Gove hatched out between them, seemed pretty good at the time. But when he mentioned about value in natural capital and using the public purse to pay for it, I then realised how Auntie Gladys felt when she realised that Uncle Fester had discovered the family silver, because we were in trouble once that lot had had a look at it, seeing where they could make the money from. So coming back to the spider, that's how I see it, natural capital. Far too complex for us to understand, but it's the only way I'm looking at it. Farmer up the road from us, Johnny Scott, milk cows since Adam was a lad. His family have, everybody has. That's why the spider reminds us a little bit of him. He failed his red tractor inspection for his milk production. He milked cows into the teens of lactations, grazed ryegrass in early March, dung beetles galore, grew his own spring barley to feed his cows. He failed his red tractor and he thought, I'll just wrap up. Wasn't John Scott that was at fault. It was that red tractor and Arla contract. All that natural capital that he had built up over the years and generations just about chucked down the river because somebody else is coming in now and we haven't got the farm that was. Okay, you had dung beetles to die for. I know the farmer coming in and the way he's farming, those dung beetles will go. There's no dung beetles where he's farming at. Interestingly, when we're talking about grassland, rough grazing, coefficient, mob grazing, all of that, there was a fella called Robert Manning. He was an Irishman with a shovel. That's where he started. He understands soil, he understood water. He actually understood the drainage coefficient that was still work to, and he understands the roughness coefficient of floodwaters over the ground. We know to understand natural capital, if we can tap into people like him who's long gone, understand what they did, we can enhance that value. So when you've got a buffer strip on the edge of the field, you don't need to fence it off or plant something different. Maybe put a bit of lime in it, maybe get the drainage right, but use that knowledge that he had, Manning, to make it better. Okay, when we're talking about grassland, all of our farms, 48 farmers in the golf course, all hard working. Golf course aren't. Half of them have never worked and the other half don't even know what it is. But the rest of us all hard working farmers. Our farm a bit further north in the group, but it's nearly all grass farms apart from a bit of maize. We're all regenerative. We'll fulfill all of the principles of regenerative agriculture. Perhaps not the change of crop. Okay, when anybody tells you in the RSPB tend to use dirty bedding for, or dirty or spoiled grass for bedding for your cattle, remember, eventually you get farmer's lung from it. That's what I've got. That's why I'm coughing. So you can question everything just about. Anyway, I digress. When John talks about grass and breeds and species, John's got a lot of experience with beef production. Got a herd of stabilisers. The stabilise nearly all grass led all the way to the very front to when they go into a bit of a finishing yard and then they're fed a bit of cake. Okay, I know that's not part of the Pasture for Life group. I'm a member of that. I know it's part of that. It's part of filling John's pocket, which is quite big. John's pocket bulges a bit because his stabiliser cattle can do 4 to 1, corn to fed to a kilogram of beef put on. Okay, worth noticing that. Bad picture of his stabiliser cows there, but that's the only one we could get. What we started with Darren when we kicked off, we looked at the soil, because that's where it all starts. I know that, we all know that if we're farmers. It takes 100 years to make an inch of topsoil, probably a bit more. So what we did was bombarded this farm right in the middle. Wilson House Farm this, owned by a fellow called Wilkinson. We'll look at him later. And he did a lot of work on this farm to reclaim it, actually. There's a bit of an estuary, bit of the sea, 200 years ago going on. We were told to look at that from regard to getting a whole picture of the soil. Not for the SFI payment for soil, but for one that we would know we could get an accurate balance of what we were trying to put on the soil for what we were trying to create. We were told all of that soil was peat. Natural England says, there's your peat map, don't touch that. So when I did the soil test, 40 centimetres down, because that's how far you have to go, especially on this soil, great soil this, we're farming the top inch, it's that wet all the time. We went all the way down, we're told you needn't worry, it's peat all the way through. So when we had a look, that's the peat map there. Half of it is capable of getting 1,350 pounds a hectare, and the others not. And actually they want to encourage you to do your peat, but really half the farm, it's not peat. What I'm saying there is the data that you're told, the information you're told, you've got to check it first if you're going ahead. A lot of people going ahead, not quite sure which direction they're in. Coming back to SFI, you talked about the soil lay, everybody putting herbal lay in, works down here. It's a good crop break on an arable farm. Herbal lays for us in the wet northwest aren't worth a carrot. Loads of people put them in, not because they wanted to help the soil or the planet, because they wanted the 382 quid a hectare. Doesn't grow. Some people put it in, took it out straight away, wouldn't grow. Some people thought it was Dockins coming, it was just that chicory. A lot of ignorance in our group as well, mind, but it just doesn't work with us. Because we've got actually some really good lays that have been going on for years, mixed lays, because we know that that sward that we're growing is vital for profitability and our environment. No farmers kicking our wildlife into touch. When I read the peatland, the Lowland Peat Code, I don't know if he's here today, he should be, because I read it, I thought, blimey, you wrote this? My 12-year-old, and that's a horse. But actually, when you get a peat code that doesn't mention nitrous oxide, I tell you, we're in serious trouble. We're throwing nitrogen on fields, an inch water below the surface. We've got an inch above the surface from the water. Nitrous oxide galore, 290 times worse than methane, or carbon dioxide, if you like, should I say. Our peat needs looking at serious. A lot of knowledge about peat, but a lot of nonsense spoken about it. Not criticising too much. Another bit of natural capital, I think, because it's the whole. It's not just what... Another bit of natural capital is the moon. Can't milk that, otherwise folk would. And folks say, well, what's the good of including that as natural capital? Tell you what it does, it affects everything and everybody. If you farm near us a few years ago, you'd know how it affected Ronnie Tiffin, because he howls at it every lambing. That's how it affects him. It affects us all. There's a fella in our group invented the best tidal machine energy in the world. 50% better than any other. Can he get money for it? He's got a patent on it. Can he get money to develop it? No. But the moon's what makes the tides, as we all know. And that curve there shows the way that the graph, the power will move up per metre squared for that area. If we can get 8 knots, and on a 1 metre square, we get 35 kilowatts. We've only got on the bay where John farms, we've only got 3 to 5 knots. They say it comes in as fast as a galloping horse. They're about right. I saw John try to outrun it. By the time I got to the side, he was waist deep. So I know it's pretty fast. I was talking before about Helen Dixon's farm. A fellow called John Wilkinson. He's from our area, a bit further up the coast. He was the father of steel. Anybody had a shave this morning? I haven't. But Wilkinson sword, that's the man. Invented all the steel, all the iron, everything that makes everything so good. He also, and we had the net zero team up, had a look. He invented or designed and built that wheel, okay? So that wheel, 13-foot diameter, comes down a hill. It's not the speed of water we get, it's the volume. 100 litres a second over that wheel will do 6 houses. The fella who did the tidal graph and invented that tidal machine, the same fella who put plutonium into the glass up at Sellafield, he's developing those wheels. That's what he's doing now. That's a new one there. He's shrinking them from Perth to Cornwall. Good bloke, he's called. He's 82, his apprentice is 87, and his assistant's 89. Needs a bit of a hand with his natural capital, okay? But that's capturing natural capital. That capital is rainfall volume plus gravity plus altitude. And we got a fair bit of that. Not so much round here, but it's all the same wherever you're at. That farm where the old wheel was, Low Tarn Green. Loads of stone, 16 miles of stone on one farm. Good farm, real good farmers. Full of adders, full of voles, full of all sorts, okay? Real good thing. That's the quarry on the farm nearby. We can't use our quarries. Huge rate of paying for buying stone from a quarry. We want to get our own stone out the quarry. Every farm around's got a digger. Okay, the lads who do those 16 miles of wall, 3 people on that farm this year, Tom, 80 summit. Richard is 50. And Richard's son, Harry, 20. Richard died. Tom's working with his grandson now, 20 years old, starting again. All that knowledge Tom has, that's natural capital. You don't get that in a book. Sadly missed. Just over the hill from that farm, we've got Flodder Hall. This isn't a new tank here. It's a concrete tank filled with ditches, springs and gripes. Fills up, goes down a pipe. We're doing the connections now. We're making connections everywhere, us, not just water pipe ones. We're doing that water pipe because we know when we get that water down the hill, 6-inch pipe, 30-metre fall, 1 bar for 10 metres, do 4 houses that, and his dairy. Milking 300 cows, all his lads hanging on a farm, barely be able to pay the bills. That's the fact of it. So now that his electric, he'll almost do enough electricity to surround the curlew's nest with an electric fence. That's what we're told to do. That'll keep the badgers out, that electric fence. Will it what it's like? Doesn't keep anything out. All it does is show the crows where to come for the curlew's nest. The fella who won the prize at the Yorkshire show, he got 2 fledged curlews away. A bloke in our group got 17 away. Doesn't have an electric fence, got something else. He carries on like a bit of a wildlife officer. That's what we were told he should be called, okay? Doesn't do anything outside the law, just looks after the curlews. Interesting fella, really him. Don't know if he's here. But actually, because we're leaning on that, we're working in a different direction, because we're working with technical people like Darren. I know it doesn't look it, but we're working with technical people. And he has got a fella involved with AI that can recognize a predator, identify it, and send a sonic beam to it to deter it. It's all fanciful, but that's what's happening. Way off the pace I am as regards what we can do, but that's the capabilities of what we do when we work with science. All right, I don't know what the natural capital is there. I would say it's the sonic boom or the recognition, or maybe it's just Dopey Jack putting the thing up in the field in the first spot. I'm not sure that's what happens. Go a bit further up the hill from us, Crummer Quarter here, a lake, one of the lakes in the Lake District, 2,500,000 cubic metres of water can go over that spillway if we lift the pen stocks up. National Trust, United Utilities, they're going to take that weir out because they don't need the water supply anymore. Nobody's mentioned water security in United Utilities, just one of the biggest water companies in the country. They need to wake up and all. Has this just come on, this microphone? I can hardly hear. The point is, there's natural capital in that reservoir. It only has to flow down the hill to Cockermouth, 50 metre of fall in a 2-foot pipe, and we got enough electricity to do 300 houses. The salmon come up the river. Best salmon river in England's the Tyne. It's the best river because there's 500,000 smolts released every year. A salmon in the river is worth about 400 quid, so they say to the local economy. Natural capital, the river. Natural capital, our salmon. We want permission off EA to let the hatcheries operate to put it back in. That ain't very difficult, but it is to them when they complain about genetic infiltration of the stocks up the river. There's cages up the west of Scotland in a big storm, let all their salmon out, they all come out. You can catch them dangling a worm in, or something else if you like. Brings me on to interesting situation. People say, why this indigenous really? That's what I've put it in for. When you look at the HE targets that were agreed in Japan for use of sustainable capital, natural capital, targets were for around the world, they're meant to be implemented now, for indigenous people to use natural capital and the resources. That was the target. If you want to have a look at it, make yourself feel badly how much progress we're reading, look at that. HE, it's a town in Japan. I'm indigenous. I've got a ganglion there in my hand. I think they call it a ganglion. I've got another one in this hand. My daughter has as well. Our family have. That comes from the Viking time. We're indigenous. People might recognise it, but that knowledge that we have, culture, goes with the ground. You get it with your mother's milk. That's indigenous. You don't all have to wear feathers in your hat and suck a pipe. Darren, I think you're on.
Okay, well, that's going to be a hard one to follow, and especially from a geek. You're certainly not going to clap after I finish talking. So, Let me start by saying that I'm not an agriculturalist. I'm not a farmer. I grew up on a farm in Australia, but very different farming to here. And that was a long time ago. Now, I came into this by accident, essentially. I've studied rocks from 1.2 billion years to the recent. And over the last 8 years, I've worked more in environmental science than I have geology, which is what I'm trained in. And the last 2 years, these wonderful gentlemen dragged me, kicking and screaming, into agricultural science. And I don't think I'll look back now. I really love this, and I've learned so much today. And fortunately, at that same time, I had Gabriel Sanchez contact me from Mexico, saying, I've got a grant, I can come and do a scholarship. He interviewed about 8 people, I think, at the university, and chose me to do AD systems and agricultural studies, okay? And he's going to take those skill sets that he learns here at Groundswell and from my lab, hopefully he'll learn some skills there, and go back to Mexico and apply very similar sort of techniques to Mexico, especially in the northern farming area where they have a lot of farmers leaving the discipline, leaving the working life to work in the drug cartels because it's more profitable, especially the children. So that's the ultimate aim, and he also wants to win a Nobel Prize. I don't know why. But so I'm a biogeochemist, so I look at cycles, carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, phosphorus, potassium, everything. And one thing I've come to learn is that if you generate data, that data is refutable. You can make changes with data. You can force changes by various government organizations. When they question you and you have data and you go to them and say, this is scientific data and it shows that what you're telling me is not correct, you then have a foot in which to stand and force an issue change or a policy change. And I think that's where farmers have to go. And farming groups like the LFG, I think, are wonderful mechanisms in which we can push the government to do what's right for the environment. And you'll see various photos there, the labs, us working there, geophysics, and some dirty faces in the top right. This is what I walked into. And they said, tell us about the soil. What can we do? And I went, well, you've got to get rid of the water first. Even an Aussie knows that water is not good. And you can see that flooding. That flooding is destroying the soil. And as we go back to Roosevelt, if you destroy the soil, you destroy everything above it. You can't farm it. You can't do anything with it. So one of the things was to get this permit, this marine license to actually drain that River Winster, make it flowing again, to remove the sediment, keep it flowing, keep the seawater from coming inland and destroying the soils, and also allow them to manage that land much better. So we, with Paul's help, couldn't do it without a farmer, we put this pipe into the River Winster to put in a sonde, and you'll see that little metal disc in the middle. That went into that pipe, and that measures about 6 geochemical parameters every 5 minutes. We can make it do every minute if we want, every 30 seconds. And what you'll see on this diagram to the right, you'll see these grey lines, which are the tidal cycles coming back to the moon. And what you see is a blue line, which shows you the amount of salinity that's coming into that river. And that, where we put it in the river, was about 800 meters past the tidal gates that are officially working. And what you'll see is it's not almost getting up to seawater concentrations. And you can take videos, which I did have, but I didn't want to risk it putting it onto this. You can actually see the water flowing, seawater flowing in. And you'll see that every tidal cycle, when it's maximum, we get the maximum ingression of seawater. The lower tidal cycles, it seems to be that the tidal gates are stopping some water. But we go to the next tidal cycle, we see the same pattern again, high sea salinity. Go through the next low cycle, it doesn't happen again, and we get to almost seawater at 800 meters down the river. Sorry. It's not beer, by the way. That comes next. And what it's showing is also oxygen demand and all this. That's the destruction of that river. That river is being destroyed while we are trying to get this permit, this marine permit. And you'll see it here. We took our underwater drone, not a flying one, underwater one. And you can see it in the top left, or your top right. Going in there, Gabriel, young students who are much better at this than me because they know how to use an Xbox controller. I couldn't do it. And you'll see there's dead sticklebacks. The vegetation is actually dead in the river. It's covered by mold, and that's stopping oxygen getting into the river sediment. You get deoxygenation, anoxic environments, and that kills the environment. And you'll see a photo from the drone on the top right. Something that used to be quite a living habitat at the bottom of the river is now just dead, full of just sand that's being deposited there. And most of that is actually beach sand. And when you actually look in this area of the river, actually there's sea lettuce seaweed growing in that river. It is completely dead of an actual freshwater habitat. While we're doing this with the farmers, we discovered another environmental issue, and you can see this here. This is an old tip that is draining out through an old system where it would actually, all the metal oxides would oxidize, precipitate out, and that's why you see a lot of iron oxides precipitating out. You use these sort of various beds, and all of that precipitates out. You use reeds to take up different other metals and all that, but it's mismanaged. And all of this water goes over the land and actually floods out in the bottom corner photo into farmers' lands and into the top of the River Winster, which then is polluting the entire river. And you'll see there a citizen science test using ammonium. Ammonium tester only cost about £50. You can take that around, and it says 25.3 milligrams per litre. I took some water, sent it off, cost me hundreds of pounds per sample. I get the same result. So farming and farming scientists can actually get involved to generate this kind of data. Now, to give you some sort of idea, 25 milligrams per litre, what's the toxicity of ammonium for life in water habitats? 2.8 milligrams. So this is killing everything that's there. Now, I acknowledge I don't know much, especially in farming. And so I need you as farmers, and I think scientists in general need farmers, to come to us, allow us to have your land, to do experiments, to do real-world experiments on the particular farms, because there's not one rule can be applied all over the country. Every farm is specifically different, microclimate, soil composition, everything like that. And of course, you know the land better than anyone. Yeah? You're not going to go personally out to destroy your land. You know it intimately, and your intimate knowledge can help us. So one thing that we're trying to do, and this is Gabriel's first chapter, is called Nutrascapes. So it's nutrient maps of farms. You'll see there we've got a grid system of about 83 cores. We're doing cores, not just grab samples like a W sampling. We're looking at various depths, 2, 5, 10, 15 centimeters or whatever. We're looking at CNP, pH, trace elements, of the like there. Once you extract that data, for that farm alone, this is a small dairy farm, we will create 4,650 data points minimum. You take that, for each layer, you can create a map of the distribution of those concentrations. And then once you do that as depth, you'll also get a 3D map. It can allow you to understand the soil, not just what's in the surface, but what's underneath you, and how elements and minerals will move up and down. And we're starting to complement that also with fungi analyses as well, to look at the bacteria and the fungi and bacteria of the soils, the micro-community that's going to keep those soils alive. Now, the other thing that we're doing is a lot of biochar work, and you see here, this is an article that's shared to me by a farmer from the Lynster Farmers Group. I can't read their names here. Who is it? Mark and Sandy, I think. Are you here? No, hopefully not. Anyway, they've done a great study. But what they don't have is data. They have evidence by what they've seen, but there's no data, very little data. And I think when you're talking to government organisations, they don't care about what you think. They want to see data. And data is the thing that's going to change it. And I live for data. And they just spread biochar onto the land, increase pH, increase organic carbon, decrease leaching, and captures nitrogen. I've worked with Brody Biomass, and a little plug, his tent is down there somewhere. And everyone knows the benefits of biochar. Yeah, a lot of it is based on scientific studies that are done in labs, or they're done in greenhouses. But they've used potting mix. They haven't used real farming soils. So we've gone along and done that. We're doing grass silage with Novagene as well to look at the bacterial and fungal communities. We've taken a bit of space from the farmer. We've planted biochar and dug it in by different concentrations ranging from a control, which nothing is added, up to 80 tons per hectare of biochar added. Yeah, it might turn into a lot of money, but once you add biochar into a soil, you never have to do it again. Yeah, it's there forever and it will be effective forever. Putting it on the surface is not effective, as it is if you put it in that top 5 to 10 centimeters of soil. And you'll see in the right of yours, we've also taken and done it in the greenhouses. But what we've done is we've actually stolen some of that farmer's soil, loaded up the hire car, broke its axle almost, took it back to Durham, and we're actually growing it in the greenhouse because we're afraid that the field experiment might fail. And you'll see there, and unfortunately I couldn't add another photo that we took just yesterday, but in that photo, you can almost instantly see which one has not had biochar. And that's the top left. Hardly grown at all. They're all under the same condition, except the other plots have biochar in it, and they had a little bit of slurry, again stolen from the farmer, and sprayed onto it. And we looked at it before we came, and I've shown some people around here, so if you want to see it, just mug me afterwards. But the biochar at 80 tons per hectare equivalent is almost up to about 8 inches already in 4 weeks. Massive growth. And we'll be doing all the sugar tests and everything like that afterwards to then report back hopefully next year. And then we're doing Miyawaki forests. Yeah? How many people know what a Miyawaki forest is? Yeah, good. So it's a Miyawaki forest designed by a Japanese botanist to essentially grow trees intensely, very close together, increases soil microbiomes, increases insects and butterflies, biodiversity, and you grow it really intensely, the amount of trees. So we've done a pilot study at Durham University with an archaeobotanist, an environmental archaeologist, and you'll see in that graph, there's two, the control versus the biochar. And you'll see, this is with silver birch, that the biochar grew 30% more than just planting birch into a normal soil. 30% more. That's not just on total biomass, that was leaf biomass as well as root biomass. And we had students actually count all the leaves on each one of those trees. But what we did is with a farmer and with Delta T, they've been helping us with monitoring all the conditions. We took a strip of land between the farming and the river, a levee bank. We took 200 meters by about 1.8 meters, and we planted 2,000 trees in 2.5 days. Yeah, and that again is under biochar, and we're hoping that we'll see the same kind of experiment on that farm. But even if it doesn't work, there's 2,000 trees being planted. The biodiversity, the ecological and environmental benefits are going to outstrip any sort of scientific outcome. And so I'd like to hand this last slide before I hand back to Paul, so you can start laughing and clapping again, is you start with the farmer. Don't start with the scientist. Don't expect or don't allow the scientist to come in and say, this is what you need to do, because you know better than the scientist. Tell the scientist the questions or the problems you have and allow them to just go away and do their geeky thing and come back and say, have you tried this? Could we try that? And once you do that and work with scientists locally, or even if you want to come up to Durham and talk to me or send me down to your farm, if you've got border collies, that's my heaven, so I'll come down and see it. I can implement change. And once we implement change, we're actually going to be in a better position in the future. Thank you very much.
So you see that picture there, that in the middle of that huddle there, that's Tamara Finkelstein. She was Permanent Secretary of State for DEFRA. John got her up for 2 days, spent 2 days with us, brought a team of policy changes, went back home, said, I'm never going up there again. But actually, we've had a bit of input. She's listening to what our group of farmers are saying, practical people. I guess she's listening to a lot of people, but we're still in touch. So she brought a lot of good people with her. We were in Whitehall on Thursday with some of them and all. So we're trying for the farmers and for the landscape. Okay, just come back to what Darren was saying before about his biochar. Biochar is a real product from wood. If used properly, it's valuable. The best thing is, if proper woodland products could have a value back to the woodland, then we might manage it for what money they make instead of just how they're looking. Because all that ecosystem service that we've got, it's nice and good, but get a real value on things, that's when people really appreciate it. So working wood's a lot me, I have done, because our farming's so crap in the winter, you got to go tree planting, felling, selling firewood, working in the sawmills, whatever you're doing. So I've got quite a knowledge of trees. Interesting. Maybe we should have a tree stall up next year, John. What was interesting as well about our whole group, 48 farmers, in our group, we've got 2 farmers and both of them have got slaughterhouses, small slaughterhouses. Incredibly valuable asset, that. Interesting thing working in the slaughterhouse. 2 types of people are exempt from jury service. One's a mortician, the other one's if you work in a slaughterhouse, because it sends you cold. Can do, not if you've got reverence for life. If you've heard an ox at the slaughterhouse moaning, you care, you don't get cold, you care more. Actually, what's interesting about animal life, animal death, whether it's in the bull ring or wherever, Nina Simone, she was a big one of understanding the bullfight, a little bit different, her view on things, on a lot of things, wasn't far off. What's interesting about reverence for life that you can get from a slaughterhouse, a lot of people in the slaughterhouse now, they have an imam present. They have a reverence for life. If we all have a reverence and we're looking in the same direction, which we need to do, that's why Groundswell's good, a lot of people looking in the same direction, we got a chance of changing things. When you work in a slaughterhouse, you're judge and jury on something else's life. Very important situation to be in that, because it means you're making a choice on what's happening. So you can't take it cheaply. Leads me on to the next situation we're on. Our prison service, natural capital, people in the prisons. Loads of talent, loads locked up, loads should be. I should have been in there myself for a short while, but I was lucky. Okay, so we're working with National Park Authority, Lake District Planning Board, FIPL, Farming in Protected Landscapes. We've got a scheme going for getting people out, not just out from the open prisons, where, can you believe, a lot of them go home at weekends and go to prison, go home during the week, go to prison at the weekends, because they've got to be available for work. That's what's happening in our prison system. But we're hoping to work with prisoners, and we are, of getting them out into the agricultural community so we can actually benefit them, learning the skills, tree planting, how much to that mind, walling, building, slating, roofing, tiling, habitat assessment, all of those things we can do. Give them a chance. A lot of good folk in there. They're natural capital. People are natural capital. Our scouts and our less able groups are putting our bird boxes together, 1,000 of them, that can do them for £3, wood from start to finish. Not like some I've seen around here today. Almost buy my car for what they're selling an owl box for. We've got to get home in the car tonight, mind, sir. But that's what it is. We can help. Get everybody engaged. All them scouts, school groups we're working with, not on a higher level stewardship visitor thing that you can get on an individual farm, just as a farm group. One of our farms every day has 1,600 kids round the farm for free every 2 years. Been doing it for 20 years. Nobody's even said thanks yet, apart from the kids. Don't suppose it matters much. We've got a grey partridge programme releasing grey partridges. We've got 2,000 in incubators. We started off with 100 last year. We're connecting the farms. The only reason we can do that is because it's the only red list species that are allowed us to work on or with. A lot of knowledge that goes with those birds. There's an even bigger knowledge that's going over the horizon at the moment. Even the horizon's natural capital. When you look at our lads on the west coast of Cumbria there, they're from descendants of people who used to breed the canaries for the coal mines. If you got a rare bird, let's get the eggs, let's get it hatched out, let's get these lads rear them, let's repopulate areas. Don't spend 4 years getting a release programme off Natural England. Natural England, EA, DEFRA, they've all got to wake up to the aspirations that we have. All of us. That's how I see it. Scouts gathered all these tree guards up off a field, or a fella had been paid for planting this hedge, never took his tree guards off. Half the tree guards died. The scouts come, young. Some of them, it took half an hour to get one tree guard off. But they gathered them. They're still to pick up yet. They're blowing all over the spot. That's my job. But we'll get to it, like, eventually. Everybody getting involved. We can do that on a big scale. We all need to look in the same direction. This is a lovely slide from me. For me, not from me. I didn't photograph it. Ditch and a hedge. If you've got a hedge and a ditch, you've got 5 interfaces for environmental interface. You've got the field to the ditch to the bank, and the bank into the ditch to the bank, and the bank into the field on the other side. During the Enclosures Act, when you got a bit of land, you dug your ditch and you put your soil on your own side. So you can cross a ditch to your hedge, but not the other way around. That's the way you manage water in the system. That's how we used to do it. That was the law that went on. We've all forgotten that. When I left school, we used to grub loads of those hedges out in 1978. Good idea from EU until you realise what was living in a hedge. I used to love doing it, £2.20 an hour. Dreadful, I'm getting paid for putting them back in now. Somewhat wrong, really. When I look at flooding and look how important the ditch is, that's our counts of our marsh fertilities. Since I've stopped farming it and on the flood years, the web count numbers done by the scientists, they're diving down big style. Correlation between non-farmed land and species disappearance. We're seeing it in the moths as well on the flooding, okay? Flooding, managing water in the ditch, in the stream, in the hedge, that's where we need to be. If you manage a hedge properly, look at the carbon capture we're getting. There's loads of groups around here talking about hedges, and rightly so. They're a beautiful asset, natural capital. You don't have to leave them every year to cut them every 2 years. You can cut them every year. Some of our cattle there, all of those ermine moths, mini ermine moths, 200 metres, hedge, eaten almost to the quick. Hedge will come back. All those moths, all the little red starts feeding it. There's none of them on the hedges that we've left for 2 years. Yeah, they have the place. Not all of them. Managing a good hedge system. There's a pollard tree in the corner in the ash there. You can pollard ash. You can't pollard everything. Okay? This is an interesting one. Wettest place in England, this. There's millions and millions of tons of stone in the rivers, especially in the northwest, that needs using. Okay? United Nations figures say for every body in the world today, we've used 17 kilograms of ballast and we'll use the same tomorrow. That's a big pile. You can wash it, crush it, grade it, transport it and move it and still make a profit on it. That's natural capital. Because it's unmanaged, we've got riverbed rise. We've got riverbed rise, we've got rapid flooding. We've got fluvial flooding that the government call surface water flooding. It's not surface water, it's fluvial flooding come over the top. But because you can get money for surface water, that's what they call it that for. That's subborodal, if anybody wants to know. Like that every year. The reason you can't touch it is because you'll kill the fish. Tell you what, I'll not even tell you. There's a lot of infrastructure on our rivers and becks and ditches. Doesn't have to be fancy, just a board on a culvert's enough to control the water. This is off an old mill stream. Beautiful thing, a mill pond. Black water. When you get water going over those water wheels, you don't want white water. That means there's air, less weight, less volume. You want black water. Okay? Signers for farmers. There's better ones than Darren around, I can tell you that. But if by working together, we've got a chance of doing things for the good. And actually, if we do things for the good, we might always end up happy. God forbid that should ever happen. I put this in the other day, that our lass's washing was on the line. It was all green. It's not managed, this. I took a photo of it. Because that's what we've got all over the spot. Green washing from everybody. United Utilities, I get it all the time, what they're doing. I'm on the North West Regional Flood and Coastal Committee. They told me they've improved their assets by 52 million. I said, will you tell me where? And they said they'll send some pictures. Still waiting. 2 years. Not coming. They haven't. So a lot of greenwashing going on. Good reminder of that. But actually talking about being happy, if we're all going the same way, no good. If you're spinning like a spider, you get a web. So that ties in nicely with our end slide. So just going to tell you something else about natural capital, how it's passed on, regenerative, generated through Direction's family, John's family, several families, all behind him and before him. See that picture there, Roosevelt on the left and in the middle with his kiddie. That lady on the right, our Auntie Annie Douglas, great Auntie Annie. She told him all he knew about soil. Did I get a, what's his name, OBE or any, whatever they get for it? Because our Annie, no, dead right that. He learned what he knew about soil from Auntie Annie, from Dumfries. Great Auntie Annie, actually. I never knew her. That's a picture, a obituary about her. It's an interesting life. Thanks for listening. I'll give you back to John.
Cheers, Paul. Thank you very much. We are a bit tight on time, but if there's any questions, we'd be delighted to take them. So thank you to Paul and Darren and Hugh. And have anybody got a challenging question, especially for Paul? You know, we could do with a Anybody got a question? If not, we can.
Oh, there's a question there.
So, oh yeah, gentleman there.
Thank you very much for entertaining. Is it a farm cluster you've got, or is it a business? Can you just say a bit more about how you were formed, and did you get funding from someone, or is it your own cash?
It's a farm cluster. Basically, farmers put their hands in the pockets to start with voluntarily to do an engineering report on the water level management of the valley, which was done by Hugh. And following that, we recognised the importance, and the farmers were enthused by what had been done, that we should try and come together. So we then came together and formed the limited company, and they put their hands in their pockets again to put a fee in. We've since had funding from Westland and Furness Council for biodiversity projects, etc. And we've had funding now from Network Rail, but to help us clear the River Winster, because they recognise as a group we've probably far more ability to do it far more economically than what they might have themselves. And so there is funding of that nature, but a lot of the work that has been done by my colleagues here, and that has been a lot of voluntary work and effort put into the whole scheme. It's been a real community spirit of farmers and the community working together for the good of society. That's what it's basically been. Anybody else?
Thanks. Yeah, I was just interested in your in clearing the river there. So, how did you find that? Did you say £100,000 to do the work? And what are you expecting? What changes are you expecting to see?
Well, that comes down to the Royal Engineer, you.
So the £120,000 is the amount of money that it's cost us to get the marine licence, not to do the job. The job itself will cost us near to £250,000. And the reason it's going to cost us that is because it's taken so long to get round to doing it. And that's, we've had to repair, or we will repair, eastern and western training walls. 500 metres of training walls come out from the railway embankment. And without those being repaired, the west-east longshore drift fills up the channel. So this has got to be a systematic approach. We're going to have to shift 10,000 cubic metres of sediment. And in order to shift that sediment, we've had to use a particular innovative approach, which allows us then, using water injection dredging, to use the flow of the river and the flow of the tide to take the sediment out. And that was when Darren talked about the toxicity or the potential for pollution of the sediment, that we had to go and take analysis of the sediment. And the idea there is that this isn't just clearing one river, because all the rivers and outflows are suffering from broadly the same issues, from Carlisle to Chester. And if we can get these outflows functioning properly, and it's not about draining the land, it's about using the water as an asset, as Paul has said, then we end up with a situation where the farmers can have confidence that what they do on their farms will endure, and they will then invest, and our food production will improve, but not only the food production, but the environmental issues and the societal issues. So this becomes, for us, it becomes a a moment where we have to win on the River Winster, not just for the farmers, but for everyone. And what we learn, we will then help other farmer groups from Carlisle to Chester to improve.
Thank you, Hugh. We've probably time for one more if there is any burning question. If not, we'll wrap up. Anybody else anywhere? No? In that case, I would first of all just like to ask Gabriel from Mexico to stand up, because you are part of the team, and even though he's on the stage. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you. And so, thank you all very much for attending this afternoon and being attentive and listening to the panel. And thank you to Paul, to Darren, and to Hugh for the time and thank you very much indeed. Thank you.